Feast of Ghosts, Day of the Dead, Samhain, All Souls Day, Halloween. Howdy, y'all. I'm Drew Edwards, and I am the writer and creator of Halloween Man Comics. And as you can guess, with a title like that, I'm absolutely crazy about all things Halloween. Now, this year, we are celebrating our 25th year of cult classic comics with a brand new omnibus from Red 5 Publishing. In fact, this is considered a stop on my book tour. Thank you. You should applaud that. 25 years is a long time to do something. Now, we all know that Halloween is associated with witches, monsters, and demons, but have you ever stopped and wondered why? Why? Well, I'm going to tell you. Halloween has its roots in the Celtic festival of Samhain. That's pronounced Samhain, despite what Glenn Danzig or the real Ghostbusters cartoon would have you believe. I'm going to take our short time together to dig a little deeper into the roots of our favorite Halloween tradition. I think we all know them: candy, costumes, carving pumpkins. I want to explore the hows, whats, and whys of Halloween. Halloween, as I said, got its start as part of the Celtic Festival of the Dead, a time where people thought the veil between the mortal world and the world of the spirit was thin. People believed all manners of ghouls, ghosts, demons, and other supernatural creatures were wandering. They lit bonfires, they donned disguises, they gave tribute, they did everything they could to appease the things that walked in the dark. Fast forward a couple of centuries, and immigrants brought their old world traditions to a new world, America, where these traditions were mixed with Christian celebrations like All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day, or local traditions like in the American Southwest and Mexico, Dios de los Muertos, Day of the Dead. Now, the first and foremost thing about Halloween is we associate costumes, monsters, ghosts, witches. We've already all established that. I bet you've never stopped to wonder, why the heck did we start dressing up like them in the first place? Why are we dressing up like monsters? Why are we dressing up like ghosts? It's fun. No, it's not because it's fun. It's for protection. The idea was simple. The ancient Celts believed that if a ghost came a-calling during Samhain time, they would take one look at you in your costume and go, "Oh, one of us," and float on by. There was a more practical side to this as well. Bonfires were a huge part of Samhain celebrations. Sometimes these pits of fire would get so big that ash would cover the entire village. And keep in mind, this was a time where garments were not easily washed or replaced. So a thick wooden mask or a cloak made of animal skin could protect your clothing. Very, very, very simple, and also kept you safe from monsters and ghosts. Come on, cleanly, efficient ghost busting. Now, when Irish immigrants brought these traditions over into the United States, this gave way to what we now think of as the modern Halloween costume. But of course, like most things Halloween, it's a mixture of something older and something newer. See, in Europe, when they tried to Christianize Samhain rituals, they brought it into All Souls Day, All Saints Day, and they tried to sanitize. You weren't supposed to dress up like a monster anymore. You weren't supposed to dress up like a witch anymore. You were going to dress up like a saint, or you're going to dress up like an angel, or you're going to dress up like Jesus H. Christ. And you would go door to door celebrating this in pageants they called souling rituals. Yeah. Now, flash forward to the 20th century, we're still doing it. We're still dressing up in costumes. May have lost the how and the why on that, but we still enjoy it. And Halloween costumes have given away from the traditional ghosts and goblins, from the saints and angels. Now you're dressing up as movie monsters, pop stars, whatever's trending on TikTok. But keep in mind, when you dress up in a Halloween costume, you are actually taking part in an ancient and noble tradition. You're not just trying to make your friends laugh. You're not just trying to look hot. You're doing something to protect yourself from ghosts, for crying out loud. Now, the next stop on our haunted Halloween history hayride is the very symbol of the holiday itself. Yes, that's right. That grinning carved pumpkin we all know as the jack-o'-lantern. Now, Jackal gets his name from the legend of Stingy Jack, coming again from Ireland and Scotland. Notice a trend here. Now, Jack was a man that was so wicked or so clever that neither heaven nor hell would take him. So he was doomed to wander the night. A humble lantern, his only companion, carved out of a turnip. Yes, a turnip, lit with the ember of hell itself. Talk about mood lighting. Now, fast forward generations upon generations, and again, we are in the good old US of A, the United States of America. And what did Irish immigrants find? They found that the domestic pumpkin was bigger, softer, easier to put a candle inside, and much easier to carve. However, there is a darker, more important side to this. You see, the jack-o'-lantern is also a folk magic ritual. It exists to protect you. You see, the idea of carving a face into a gourd and setting a candle aside of it during a time period where, again, the veil between the living and the dead is thin. The jack-o'-lantern is to protect you. It is a ward against spirits. It absorbs all those ghoulies and ghosts walking around. And if you keep your pumpkin lit until midnight, well, you're just letting every ghost and goblin in the neighborhood know to buzz off. There is, however, a less festive side to this tradition. In the Balkans, yes, the Balkans, jack-o'-lanterns were not just used for Halloween, but for Christmas as well. You see, that was also a time period where we believed that the land of the dead and the land of the living collided with each other. Now, if you were to keep your jack-o'-lantern out too long after it's been sucking in all those ghosts and demons, it could turn into something a lot less festive. A vampire pumpkin. Yes, these rotten jacks would roll around town looking for blood. I'm deadly serious about this. This is serious stuff. Serious stuff, folks. But the jack-o'-lantern is now the undisputed symbol of Halloween, vampire or not. And if you put a jack-o'-lantern onto your doorstep, it notes that you are open for business. And what are you open for business for? Trick-or-treaters. Yes, trick-or-treating, probably the most beloved of all Halloween tradition, the thing that fills you with warm, fuzzy nostalgia for a pillowcase full of candy, or egging your neighbor's house because they dared to give out toothbrushes. Trick-or-treating, like most things, again, with Halloween, is a mixture of ancient folks' magic and modern ingenuity. How trick-or-treating started out as something that they called in old Scotland guising. Children would go the door during All Hallows Eve dressed as, again, angels, saints, Jesus, gargoyles, or if you were feeling particularly spicy, the devil himself. This is where the treat part of the equation came in. You see, there was a baked confection known as a soul cake that was to be given out in exchange for prayers for the wayward dead. But woe to you if you did not take part in this ritual. You see, if you did not give out a soul cake, you might be pranked during All Saints or All Souls Day. This mischief blamed upon, of course, the most obvious suspects, wayward ghosts who are pissed off that they did not get their cake. We all really know that it was the same kids that nowadays think that toilet paper is a perfectly acceptable decorating option. Now, trick or treat, the actual phrase, or a less smooth version of it, which is treat me or get tripped up, is traced back in 1917 to first being used in Canada, of all places. That's right, Ontario, 1917. Now, the canonical trick or treat was first adopted in Alberta in 1927, but trick or treat got its big mainstream break by, of all people, Donald Duck. In 1952, the now classic Disney cartoon Trick or Treat was brought upon America. Huey, Dewey, and Louie, his mischievous nephews, hit the street showing everybody the fun of trick-or-treating with bags of candy and lots of attitude. It also had a ridiculously catchy theme song called Trick or Treat for Halloween by the Mellow Men, and not for nothing, they also did all the music for Disney's now famous Haunted Mansion. But Trick or Treat went global in 1966 thanks to good old Charlie Brown when The Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown aired. With the Peanuts gang using the phrase, it was almost uniformly adopted by baby boomers in every generation since. Leave it to the Peanuts gang to let kids know the glories of trick-or-treating and the horrors of getting rocks in your trick-or-treat bag. So keep in mind, when you are saying trick-or-treat, you are actually taking part in something that is relatively new considering the ancient origins of Halloween. It's literally barely over a century old. Halloween continues to grow. It is a monolith. Each year it gets bigger, bolder, weirder. It is both ancient, bringing up memories of bonfires and saints' vigils, and very modern, with haunted houses, with sets that they rival Hollywood, viral social media costume trends, and bags upon bags upon bags upon bags of candy sold every October, not to mention Simpsons episodes. Halloween is deeply personal and endlessly customizable. Everybody the globe over wants in on America's holiday. Yes, I just said it. Halloween is America's holiday, not the 4th of July, because no other holiday is as much of a melting pot. But that's okay. What does America like to do? Export things. And as of 2025, Halloween is now rivaling Christmas in both economic importance and cultural importance. Just with a lot less fruitcake, a lot less obnoxious songs, and a lot more fake blood. Oop. Happy Halloween, everybody! Not for nothing, that's my daughter. Isn't she cute?
All right. That was pretty awesome. Another round of applause, please. All right. Get a little wolf howls. Nice stuff. All right. So who has questions for our Halloween man? All right. Heading over here. Seeing what's what.
So you only touched on him, but would you tell us about Halloween Man?
Halloween Man is a comic book that I am the writer and creator of. It is best described as the weird adventures of a zombie superhero and a sexy mad scientist girlfriend. They battle everything from the Headless Horseman, Nazi vampires, tentacle monsters, flesh-eating zombies, the Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, evil Christmas trolls. It's also a love story. Think Fantastic Four meets Evil Dead. And yes, I have copies available to buy from me here because, again, this is technically part of my book tour. Did that answer your question? Thank you.
All right. See a question back. Oh, see a question right here. First here, then there.
So you basically said that what we think of as modern Halloween, ignoring the commercial infusion, is basically a blend of Irish Samhain and Indigenous Americans' Dia de los Muertos. What do you think led to this syncretism? What was it about their traditions that made such a match in heaven?
So if you look throughout the history of the world, these sort of death festivals, the things where you have people kind of grappling with death in a sort of whimsical way, it's almost universal. And in fact, I mentioned the Feast of Ghosts. That's Egyptian. And that's something that it's not necessarily part of Halloween, but if you were to look at it through a modern lens, you'd be like, oh, Halloween. I think, one, despite what the current administration would like to lead us to believe, the melting pot aspect of American culture, we have a bunch of, we are very good as a nation at taking all these different cultures that live here and sort of making a beautiful cocktail out of it. And Halloween is very much that, which is why I like to remind people, as much as it's part of these ancient traditions, it's also a very uniquely American holiday. The other aspect of that, though, is people always have to find a way to grapple with their own mortality. Now, Halloween does this in a very, very beautiful way, is we make death innocent. We garb our children in it. We give it candy. We make it as charming as we possibly can be, and family friendly in a way. It's this, yeah, exactly. It's this beautiful mix of controlled chaos, community, commerce. It's all these things, and it helps us grapple with the idea that we're all going to die eventually. And it's one of the reasons why I actually think it's the most important holiday, because it's so universal, and I think that's why it eventually became a secular holiday instead of a religious one, even though there's both pagan and Christianity in the mix. Great question, by the way.
Yeah, we're doing great on questions tonight, honestly. Don't let me down.
No pressure.
No pressure. So you've touched on this in your previous response. There's been a divergence from tradition here. I was shocked to discover Super Mario and Pee Wee Herman and all these other characters who are not very spooky as part of Halloween. Would you describe yourself as a Halloween traditionalist where people ought to be spooky and scary, or do you think this cornucopia of different characters adds variety and depth to the holiday?
I think it's perfectly okay. What is wonderful about Halloween is it's become this thing that we can all explore identity for a night. So people can dress as whatever they want. I think it's perfectly acceptable to dress as the Grim Reaper, but I also think it's perfectly okay to dress as Wonder Woman if that's the expression you want for the night. Me personally, because I'm spooky 100% of the time. Like Halloween is literally every day for me. But like, for crying out loud, I look like I'm doing a Beetlejuice cosplay right now. But it's I don't typically do the superhero, or I've never done a sexy costume or anything. But I'm not against that, because I don't think you should Halloween gatekeep. I think you should allow people the breadth of their expression, because that's one of the things that makes it such a beautiful day. But great question. Thank you.
All right. We're keeping a good trend line here. What you got, my dear?
Hi, so you talked about how almost every culture at some point had some kind of version of this where they had the Day of the Dead. What do you think is one of the most interesting ones that people don't know about? Like if we had to go home and research one, I had never heard of the Egyptian one, so I'm just curious what other ones.
So I mentioned the Balkans, but also just in Eastern Europe, they have Beltane, which is basically Halloween during the summer. And it's considered the night where the demons and the witches gather in the forest or in the mountains, and people build big bonfires and they dress in costumes and everything. But it's during summer. It's not tied to fall or winter the way a lot of these other festivals are. So I've always found that one particularly interesting. Because I grew up in Texas and we're so close to Mexico, I've always been fascinated by the Day of the Dead. I consider myself very lucky that I live in a state where spooky season lasts at least an extra 2 days. I feel like the people in the north, they just don't get it. It's really, death festivals are really just like, it's a great subject that I think isn't explored nearly enough. And when you pop the cap off of that particular bottle of wine, you really just want to drink it down to the last drop. So if it is a subject that you want to explore more, I highly, highly, highly suggest doing it. There's a great book by David J. Skull called Death Makes a Holiday. That's a great place to start.
All right, so I think I saw a question here. Okay.
The mortician's daughter. I'm intimidated.
No, we switched
No.
spots.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
we're,
right.
we're mixing it up on you.
That's all right.
Yeah, I wanted to ask. I feel like broadly, there was maybe a point in time when people just dressed as something vaguely spooky or festive, and it seems like these days, you always got to have something to get about the costume. Like, do you get it? Do you get the pun? Do you get what I am? I was curious if you bumped into any trends as to when that might have changed over time, or do you have any guesses?
I think when adults started getting more involved in Halloween, like Halloween up until like the 70s was almost exclusively thought of as a children's holiday in this country. But with the advent of like punk rock culture and disco culture and sort of the embrace of a macabre nightlife, more adults started getting involved with it, and that created this pocket marketplace for funny costumes or sexy costumes or that kind of thing. But again, I don't think it's a right or wrong thing. I think it's just what is right for you. Like what is your identity that you want to take? Because it's the night that we get to transform. And so many of us, I know I have tremendous body dysmorphia issues because of my history, and I don't want to bum everybody out. But the fact that for one night I get control over my own identity, that's very freeing. And I think when you look at that from a spiritual sense, there's just something amazing about that. Great question.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, y'all are making me
You're
proud
killing
tonight.
it. You're killing it.
No, nobody's even done an essay yet. All right. Let's see. We've got, I think, 2 more people that we can get. We're going to start here and end up there.
What are you dressing up as Halloween this year?
I am dressing up as the king of the monsters, Godzilla, because my daughter, featured up there, takes after her dad, and she loves Godzilla. So my wife is going as Mothra, I am going as Godzilla, and she is going to be baby Godzilla.
All right. I think we've got time for one more. Was that over here? Or was it? Oh, I
Ask
overshot.
the fake blood guy.
I had blue shirt, but it's like a brighter blue. All right, here we go.
What are your thoughts on the latest trend of trunk or treat that's happening?
I have mixed feelings about it because there's this right-wing talking point that Halloween is in decline because during the Satanic Panic there was this mostly false idea that people were putting poison or razor blades or things like that in candy. if you really, really, really research this, which I have, all of that stuff is BS. But because of this, the right-wing talking point about that, and I'm sorry I'm getting political, but the right-wing talking point of that is like, oh, Halloween is much less popular. You know, people aren't doing that because they don't feel safe, so they have to do stuff like trunk or treat. That's actually BS because Halloween has actually become so popular that it is now, again, like I said earlier, economically almost as valuable to our country as Christmas is, which is saying a goddamn awful lot. But the other thing is that I don't like about it is I think one of the great things about Halloween is the community aspect, that we let our kids out into the street, that we deal with our neighbors on a social level. Now, if this is what it takes for the holiday to survive and thrive, then ultimately it is a good thing. But it is my personal opinion that we have lost something a little bit by not letting, you know, our children out into the neighborhoods as much, because, you know, it's you know, so much of modern society, you know, we're through our phones, we're through our computers, you know, we're so, in a way, even though we're more interconnected than we ever have been, we're also more cut off. And I think, you know, anything that we can get together as a community and find something that we all agree on, trick or treat, kids in costumes, it's candy, it's fun, you know, I think that we shouldn't lose that. Like, that's something valuable. But that's just me, and I'm the guy in the pumpkin shirt. So, you know, what do I know? You know, whatever people need to do to make their kids to feel safe for their kids and for their kids to have a good time is ultimately okay. Is that all I got time for?
Is there someone who's just like breaking your heart that they didn't get to ask a question?
One of the other speakers.
Oh gosh, and I see one over here too. All right, we got two more, but make them super zippy. All right.
So you mentioned it a few times that Halloween and Christmas are now kind of
neck and neck, baby.
Right there. So
Yeah.
I feel like as Christmas creeps up earlier and earlier every year and encroaches on Halloween space, if you have any suggestions about how we can just make Halloween last as long as possible, maybe even into Christmas's turf.
Well, the important thing to remember is that Christmas is also terrifying. Christmas is full. I'm actually writing a whole book on Christmas folklore right now. I've been working on it for the past 5 years. Christmas is filled with monsters and ghosts. And Christmas, in a lot of ways, was another death festival. So it is perfectly appropriate to make Christmas scary. The other thing, Thanksgiving is just it's just Halloween decorations without the monsters. So in my opinion, you should just leave your Halloween decorations out longer because they're more fun. You know, pumpkin pie is still good with you eat it with Frankenstein. So
Okay, so we have one last question, and this will be the last question of the night. So there's a certain pressure. Is as good a word as any. Do you feel the pressure? No. I feel great. Outstanding. Well, let's see what you got.
lay it on me.
What is the best Halloween costume you've ever seen?
The best Halloween costume I have ever seen was, well, I'm biased, and this is going to come across as a plug, but it's not. It was during the 10th anniversary of my comic book, and my now wife dressed up as the female character Lucy from my comic book, and she looked just exactly like her, and it broke my heart in a good way. But the best costume I have ever seen actually was not a Halloween costume. It was at San Diego Comic-Con this last year, and there was a guy who was Galactus. And he made a costume that was gigantic. I don't even know how he got it into the show floor. There is video of this guy if you want to dig through my Instagram. It was astounding. And that is the best physical costume I have ever seen. In fact, I wonder if he's one of you guys, a special effects guy, because this costume was astounding. The only thing that would have made it better is if he had glued on tiny members of the Fantastic Four, so he could have been fighting them. But amazing. So that is the best physical costume I have ever seen. But I've seen a lot because I am knee deep in Halloween and I go to comic book conventions almost every weekend. So I feel like I'm a connoisseur of costumes. So I think that's just about all the time I have. I was stupid and did not put my social media, so I will tell you, if you want to follow me on social media, I'll make it real easy. I basically only use Instagram, and everything else is just a repost from my Instagram, and I'm Drew_Halloween. You'll know you're on the right place because there'll be pictures from tonight on there. And again, come by my table, buy a book. This is technically part of my book tour. I have a baby. Help me feed my baby. Guilt trip, guilt trip, guilt trip. You've been wonderful. Thank you. Happy Halloween.